This moment right now, this feels real. But is it?
Confirmation bias is the tendency to process information in a way that supports the ideas and beliefs we already have. In other words, we want our worldview to make sense, and so we instinctively seek out and believe the information that aligns with our views, and disregard the rest. And this is just one of many cognitive biases we all have that makes us care less about the accuracy of information and care more about us being right. It's why two people will hear the same information and both will interpret it to fit their current beliefs. For example, two people with opposing views can hear about a mass shooting, and the one who believes in tighter gun control will see it as evidence of why their opinion is right, and the one who believes civilians need guns to defend against attackers will see it as evidence of why their opinion is right. Or another example is how if you hear something bad about someone you don't like, you believe it immediately, whereas if it's something bad about someone you do like, you are much more skeptical of it. Biases like these are why nobody ever really changes their opinion in a debate or argument. They just become even more entrenched in their original views. Our minds simplify things to try and make sense of the world, and just like with the media, accuracy is not the priority. Even our own memories can't be trusted. Our minds want to fill in the gaps, which leads us to inventing or removing details without being aware of it, which is why two people can remember the same story differently. We think of our brain like a database, but it's not. It looks for patterns and generalizations, and rather than remembering exact details, it remembers fragments of memories. So when you recall a memory, your brain is just trying to piece together some of those fragments and can easily be distorted in ways we don't even realize. Just look at the Mandela effect, where huge groups of people remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 80s, even though he didn't die until 2013. Same way that one of the most iconic lines in film is remembered as, "Luke, I am your father," when it was actually, "No, I am your father." Both collectively and individually, our memories fail us constantly. And as if that wasn't bad enough, then something came along that made the truth even harder to decipher. So here we are, divided, confused, and unsure who or what to believe. It's clear that almost everything has some bias, even if not intentional, which leads to beliefs that we never actually stop to question. For example, there are about 10,000 religions worldwide, and yet almost everyone follows the one they were born into. If they'd been born somewhere else, to different parents, they'd believe something different. And this is not to pick on any singular belief. Almost all beliefs are based on secondhand information. There's a quote that if it weren't for movies, the average person would probably have no idea what an elevator shaft looks like. We say we know what they look like, but actually we've just seen movies that tell us what they look like. The reality is that even things that we think of as being incredibly obvious and unquestionable, like terrorists are evil, it's always more nuanced. To them, we're the evil ones. It's all just down to the very different experiences and beliefs that have been instilled in us. We're all just focused on our own half-truths. Because even with hard science, we're still just trusting that the scientists have got it right. How many of us have actually read all the papers on an issue and checked for themselves? And I'm not saying we should doubt science, but we do know that science often proves itself wrong, and anything can change when new evidence comes to light. So if it's been wrong before, how do we know it's not wrong right now? How do we know that what we've been told about our world won't get disproved in the future? Let's look at Elon Musk, regarded by many as one of the smartest people alive, creating electric cars, chips for the brain, and reusable rockets. He says there's about a 1 in a billion chance we're even in base reality. In other words, he proposes that right now, the chances we are just in some kind of simulation is almost certain. His argument is that if you think of the progress that has been made in video game technology in just the last 50 years, even if that improvement rate slows down, it seems inevitable we will get to a point where games are indistinguishable from reality. We're not far off with virtual reality at the moment, let alone in another 50 years. So, if we can create a world that's indistinguishable from reality, it seems highly likely we are already in some kind of game or simulation or Matrix-type world. I mean, if you magnify anything enough, it does become pixelated. And yes, it may sound far-fetched, but how can you prove otherwise? And is it really that much harder than believing we're in an infinitely large universe spinning on a giant space rock with around 8.7 million other species, all created by a Big Bang or a god or whatever you want to believe in based on the beliefs you were indoctrinated with when you grew up? And suddenly you start to think about a dream you had that just felt so real. And then you woke up and you start to question, could you be in some kind of extended dream right now? Your senses have deceived you before, why is this time any different? Solipsism is the belief that there is nothing outside of one's own mind. If you are a brain in a vat, you have no way of knowing you're just a brain in a vat. You can never rule out the possibility that the entire world you experience, including all other people, isn't real. It's a figment of your imagination, all in your mind. When you really start to question the world around you, from the news you hear to the reality you experience, it's easy to conclude that everything is a lie. And I'd like to end this video with solutions. I'd like to tell you that you can still hold a strong position on something. You just need to be able to argue the other side of the argument first. That you should seek out the smartest people on the other side of the debate to get their opinion before jumping to conclusions. I'd like to tell you that you can still get a good idea of the truth. You just have to dig a little deeper to get a balanced perspective and not rely on a small pool of media sources. But I can't tell you that, because of course by now you're starting to see that even this video, the very video that's been on your side pointing out the lies, is in itself a lie. It's all based on my biased point of view. I've used stats that you just took at face value, and even if I tell you I got them from a reliable source, did the person creating the stats have a bias? Even the title of this video, it's a paradox. If I'm telling you the truth that everything is a lie, then everything isn't a lie, which means I was lying. The more you think about this whole problem of truth and lies, the worse it gets, the more confusing and terrifying everything becomes. Is choice an illusion? Are we being manipulated by a hidden hand that's choosing our politicians and keeping us divided so we fight each other instead of them? Are our own minds tricking us into making biased judgments on the entire world around us, so much so that we can't be sure of anything outside of the existence of our own mind? Eventually you start to wonder if questioning everything is worth it, or whether blissful ignorance is better. Because if you really are going to question anything that you can't prove for certain, then you have to accept that you could be in a Truman-style reality show right now, where the world around you isn't real and everyone else but you is in on it. Which means even I'm in on it. And they're probably gonna cut this video off soon because I've already said too much and